An economic black hole. Europe is financing its own destruction. The European Union is in a state of panic, literally panicked. Ursula von der Leyen's outrageous $840 billion military rearmament plan is not only reckless, it's the latest move of a corrupt empire that's collapsing, reports Gazetteller. It's a suicidal decision designed to plunge the old continent into an irreversible economic and geopolitical crisis. NATO is disintegrating rapidly. Washington has now pulled the plug, and Russia is watching the developments, knowing that it has already perhaps seen victory in the war with Ukraine with what's going on. An economic black hole. Europe is financing its own destruction. Let's be absolutely clear. This so-called Europe's rearmament plan is a fantasy based on debt, deception, and economic disaster. There is no real funding behind it. The EU is forcing its member states, already drowning in economic stagnation and collapse, to take on an unbearable financial burden. Governments are being pushed into debt spiral, and European elites know this. They know that there is no way to maintain this excessive level of spending without collapsing national economies. But they push it forward despite knowing the adverse consequences. Why? Because the goal is precisely destruction and chaos. It's the prefabricated chaos, deliberate attempt to destabilize Europe from within, economically and politically. Instead of the Brussels commissioners, which has the Parliament of Europe, the European Union, focusing on energy security, industrial development, and economic sovereignty, the European Union is now pouring money into military black hole, which only benefits the warmongering, hidden power brokers who pull the strings from behind the scenes. Where does this money actually go? Straight into the hands of the military-industrial complex, large corporations and the shady defense contractors feed and prosper from endless wars, from the river of humans, the same people who created the endless conflicts in the Middle East, orchestrating war in Ukraine, exhausting Western wealth, now have the audacity to attempt to plunge Europe into a permanent state of crisis and chaos, while also removing the last vestiges of national sovereignty from European member states. The reality is that this is not about European security, it's about the digital, political, economic control of Europe. A Europe drowning in debt is a Europe that's easier to manipulate, easier to drain even the last economic sliver, and thus enslave under a centralized authoritarian digital regime. And this dictatorial regime has already begun to take shape, to show its teeth. Trump pulls the rug from under Europe's feet, the end of NATO. Von der Leyen's panic crisis follows the biggest geopolitical shift in decades. Donald Trump has cut the umbilical cord from Europe. The US has officially abandoned Europe to its own fate. No more NATO subsidies, no more free security, no more blank checks to finance proxy wars. Trump has exposed the fraud of the globalists, forcing European leaders to finally face their own nakedness and weakness. And the European Union is now terrified and they're panicking. They rely on Washington, that is the United States, to keep the illusion of its omnipotence alive. NATO was their safety net, their military might, their guarantee that they could still play it safe as a world power. But now the game is over, it seems. With Trump demanding that NATO countries pay their bills or be cut off, Europe is running out of options. European countries cannot afford to meet a 5% of GDP defense spending requirement. They can't afford to fund Ukraine indefinitely, and worst of all, they cannot defeat Russia no matter how much they spend. Trump's move is not just about funding NATO, it's about forcing Europe into a corner of isolation. The US was the only thing holding this illusion of the European Union together. Without American military support, the European Union has no influence, no strategic advantage, and no future as a geopolitical power. The European Union knows it was defeated by Russia, so why this suicide mission, this debt plan of $840 billion is not only reckless, it's deliberate self-destruction. The European Union knows it cannot outmaneuver Russia. Its military production lines are empty, its economies are in ruins, and its energy sector is paralyzed. The people orchestrating this performance and this show are not idiots that are playing a different game. The real goal here is not the creation of the European army, but the creation of a permanent state of crisis, conflict, and dependency. Europe's globalized elites want manufactured economy that has to do with conflict, that will keep countries in a constant state of hardship, in a constant state of emergency, forcing them to surrender more and more power and national sovereignty to centralized European control. Take a look at the pattern. Sanctions against Russia failed, backfired, and led to the destruction of European industry due to high, uncompetitive costs, deliberate energy shortages by closing nuclear plants and cutting off cheap Russian gas, a prefabricated illegal immigration crisis that has destabilized entire countries, and now they demand the gigantic $840 billion rearmament financed by a massive debt, causing an inevitable economic collapse. It's a plan that leads us to absolute chaos, and chaos and collapse are their ultimate goal. Russia, what's happening? Europe must admit it or collapse, that Russia is winning because of all this. The truth is that no one in Brussels wants to admit is this. Europe has already lost with Ukraine, NATO is already dead, the US has withdrawn from the conflict, and Russia holds all the cards here. The EU needs Russian cheap energy. The EU needs Russian resources. The EU needs Russian cooperation. And Russia knows this. Russia doesn't even need to fight, just wait and be patient. Time is on its side. It will let Europe collapse under the weight of its incompetence and stupidity because it's not following Trump's lead, and it will let European economies collapse under unsustainable debt, and it will let its people wake up on their own, wake up finally and realize that their leaders, the Brussels commissioners, have simply sold them out and betrayed them. The European Union has two choices before it: to honestly and modestly acknowledge its defeat, negotiate with Russia, and of course look into Trump's plans, and end this suicidal conflict, or to continue on the path of self-destruction, with the only end being its economic collapse, civil conflicts, and the complete disintegration and dissolution of the European Union itself, the way things are going. And this is precisely what the Brussels elite seem to be heading to. A comfortable couch potato, increasingly fear a political economic collapse of the EU, which means they lose their power and their fat salaries. Now, the real agenda of the Russian bureaucrats, the control of what's going on through permanent crisis. It's no doubt defense and security, but about controlling the masses. And the goal is to keep Europe in a permanent state of fear and crisis, as we explained. And this is the real reason why the Commission in Brussels refused to negotiate peace with Russia. It's the reason why they are willing to plunge their economies into the abyss, because they need all this to survive. Now, the strategy will fail. The world, the European people are waking up rapidly. The Great Awakening is taking place before our eyes. The lies and deceptions will be exposed, and the European Union finally collapses. When they collapse under the weight of their own corruption, the global elite will have no one to blame but themselves. This is from Northern Observer. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.